Let's chat homeschool planning. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary and high school age. I help you implement systems and strategies in order to overcome the chaos and cultivate simplicity in your home and homeschool. Today, I'm really excited to be partnering with Shauna from Homegrown Homeschool and Davine from Calm the Chaos to do a homeschool planning collab. If you've watched any of my videos, you know how much I love planning, especially homeschool planning. I will leave a link for the playlist in the description box so you can see what everybody is up to. I can't believe we are at this point in the year for homeschool planning. We are just about to start our new homeschool year. I have shared a lot of videos over the past couple of months about the steps that I take to set up our homeschool year. I will also leave that playlist linked in the description box. If you watch some of those videos, it will make this video make a lot more sense. I have already done my yearly plan. I have chosen my curriculum. I tend to choose literature-based curriculum. We've been using mostly Sunlight curriculum since 2010 and when we first started homeschooling, and I absolutely love that literature-based approach. So a lot of my planning is revolving around books. I don't really do a lot of unit studies and we don't do a ton of family-based learning. However, this year is a little bit different. We're not using Sunlight for the core subjects. We are using some of the Sunlight resources. In fact, I don't know, you can't really see behind my chair. These are all of the books that we have for this coming year. They are all organized. I have a video how I organize all of our homeschool materials. I will leave that linked as well. But today I'm going to chat about the next step in my process. And what that is actually for me to sit down and go through the entire year and map out when I want things to be done. So because we use a literature-based curriculum, there are a lot of books and resources that we use throughout the year. I have 3 kids and 3 very different levels that are doing 3 very different years of stuff. And so even though I use what most people would consider box curriculum because it comes with an instructor's guide, I don't really follow the instructor's guide. I love their list of books. I love all of the notes. I do tend to follow the order of the books, but I don't necessarily follow their grid. And so I do my own planning every week in my Erin Condren teacher planner. I've been using this planner since 2015, I believe. It may have been 2014, but I know that my first video on YouTube back in 2015 was how to convert an Erin Condren teacher planner into a homeschool planner. That is what I do. I plan out our lessons each week and it just is what works for me. But the step that I'm going to be talking about with you today is trying to figure out how to fit all of the things that you want to do into the different months. And the way that I do this is first I go through my whole year and I will write down when we are having vacations, days off, special days, holidays, birthdays, anything where we may be away. I write all of that stuff here so that I am not unrealistic when I am planning out the materials that we're going to be covering each month. I structure our year in kind of a 6 weeks on, 1 week off schedule, 6 weeks of focused mom homeschool. The 1 week off is really a week off for me. And it's a week where my kids can focus on their passion projects. We've been doing this for a couple of years now and really like this way of structuring our homeschool year. But no matter how you structure your homeschool year, it's really important to be realistic with the time that you have. I think oftentimes we think that we can get a lot of stuff done, but we don't take into account all of the other things that life throws at you. And so I always advocate for making sure that you leave margin in your homeschool days. Why do you want to leave margin? Well, partly so that you are not planning too much and you're constantly behind, but also so that you can follow the rabbit trails. One of the wonderful parts of homeschooling is that we have the opportunity to follow our kids' interests. If you find that your child is really interested in a particular topic that you've covered, but you've finished with that topic and they're still interested, you want to continue to foster that love of learning and that curiosity and find new resources to bring into your home to continue learning about that thing. It doesn't mean that every single interest that your child has is going to be a deep dive for your homeschool, but if there are more resources that you can find around a particular topic or subject, and your kid is really wanting to do more with that topic or subject, you ought to. Part of homeschooling is your kids learning how to learn and seeking out new information for themselves. And so that is an important reason to keep margin in your homeschool schedule. And what that means is that sometimes you drop things that you are not as interested in, and that is okay. So once you have your list of days when you're not going to be homeschooling, that's when you can start to look at all of the resources that you have for the year and figure out where they're going to be placed. Now, like I said, we typically use Sunlight, and I do have curriculum choice videos for all of my kids this year. This year, my oldest only needs an English credit to graduate, and we are going to be doing Sunlight 630, which is British literature. That course, if you do the complete course, can count as one full credit of literature, half a credit of poetry, and half a credit of composition. So that is a 2-credit course. There are 27 books, and then there are a couple of other books relating to vocabulary that are in that curriculum. That's a lot of books for 1 year. She does not need 2 English credits. She only needs 1 English credit. And so the next step in the process is to go through your book lists of the curriculum that you're using and figure out which ones are must-dos and which ones would be nice to complete. Now, if Emma only finished half of the books from British literature, it would still be a very, very full English course, high school English course for her. This book list also has a lot of the AP books that are part of the AP British Lit. So if she wanted to take that test at the end of the year, I kind of have to figure that out now so that I can book it on College Board. But there is a lot of options within this one course. We do not have to have it be a 2-credit course. And so you kind of want to look at the resources that you are using and see, are there books that we may not need to read? Are there books that maybe there is some content that you don't want your kids to be reading, or perhaps there is something more difficult or you think it would be better to have later on? That happens a lot for us when in the younger years, we may have books that are just not that interesting to a particular child at that age, but it is still a good book and can be read in a year or two on their own or part of another year's worth of curriculum. So you kind of have to go through and figure out which books are absolute must-dos. Now, a lot of people will do this before they start buying curriculum. I like to have the full program in front of me. I've always bought full programs because we always end up using all of the books and materials at some point. And I have younger kids that are coming up, so we will eventually use the resources again and again. So I always tend to purchase those books, but then each year, depending on the student, I will decide whether they're going to read all of the books or whether we're going to skip some of the books or whether we're going to put some of the books away for a later time. That's kind of the next step for me, is to go through and figure all of that out. Now, my high schoolers are going to be using the Guest Hollow Government Economics and Personal Finance course, and so I have done a bit of research, and if you go through, that course can be 1 full credit of government, 1 full credit of economics, 1 full credit of personal finance, and a half credit of logic. If you are doing all of the things, that's almost a full year of school. And honestly, because of all of the literature in that Guest Hollow program, you could also have it be an English credit if you wanted to. So you have to look at your resources, and you kind of have to figure out what are the things that we definitely want to do and what are the things that it's okay if we miss or skip or do at a later time. So once you kind of figure that out, you can start to put the books down when you're going to use them. Most curriculum does come with some sort of lesson plan or time, like a schedule for when you're going to be doing certain things. Some curriculum will come with like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. And so you can kind of say, okay, well, we're going to do lessons 1 through 20 in this month, and we're going to do lessons 21 through 35 this month because we have a week off of vacation or whatnot. So you kind of have to look at your schedule and look at the amount of work that you have to do in a current month. And then you kind of have to adjust and see, is this going to work for the time that we have allotted for homeschooling this month? Or is it going to end up putting us back? And it's better to make the decision ahead of time to just push things forward a little bit and remove things, and then be pleasantly surprised that you've gotten through all of the work. I don't want my kids to ever feel like I am forcing them to do a bunch of things that are so unimportant to them. Now, obviously, there are always days when math is not fun, or a book is not interesting, or a project is kind of blah, and you kind of have to reassess or figure out if you can just push through. We don't drop things just because the kids don't enjoy them, but I don't want every single day to be that way. I want to give my kids enough room to have educational autonomy and to be able to pursue the passions that they have while also getting a good education. And so it's really a balancing act. And because I've been homeschooling so long, it seems a little bit easier for me to put things here and there and to adjust along the way. I have a monthly reset day each month where I do a lot of personal planning and goal planning and projects and other things. But another part of that monthly reset day is for me to take a deep dive on our homeschool the previous few weeks and see what is working, what is not working, and what do I need to change going forward. So making little incremental changes throughout the year instead of big giant shifts a couple of times a year is very helpful for me. So once you have all of your days that you're not going to be homeschooling and important days, vacations and stuff written down, then I start taking sticky notes and kind of writing out what things I want to cover in the particular months. Now, for my elementary age student, I also include themes, and that is, all of those fun school themes that you think of, like apples in September and pumpkins in October. Even though she's going into 4th grade, we still try and do some of those fun things around field trips and things like that. Just having a little bit of an extra fun thing, which sometimes I forget having 2 high schoolers to also include that. So taking the time ahead of time to write some of those ideas down here helps me, because essentially what I do is I take whatever is written in this month and I look at it in my weekly planning, and I'm saying, okay, am I covering everything? Are there places where I need to move things around again? And I can do that weekly. Along the same lines, when you are going through and looking at your books and seeing which ones you may not want to do, another option that I do every year with all of my book lists is I will go through and look at the books that are available through Hoopla, which is our library digital service that has audiobooks available. And I will see which books are available as audiobooks. Because we're literature-based learners, and I've been doing this so long, I know that there is no possible way for me to do all of the read alouds. Yes, I still do some read alouds with my high schoolers. They enjoy it. We have some amazing discussion. I think it's very important. But as my kids have gone through the elementary levels and then middle school levels, I needed help to get through all of the resources, and so having some audiobooks is very helpful. Similarly, for my high schoolers, if they are going to read all of these books plus read their own personal books, it's almost impossible. Unless you have somebody who reads extremely fast, which I just don't think is realistic for kids. even in college, it's just not realistic. You kind of skim and you don't actually read. Having the book list sorted so that you have options with audiobooks is very, very helpful. If there is a book that maybe your child is just not really enjoying reading physically, but they're still able to recall information well listening to an audiobook, that is a great option. There have been some harder books that have been helpful for my kids to listen to, especially for pronunciation. I am not a professional pronunciation guide for all books, and so having the audiobook sometimes is helpful. It's also helpful for me, when I'm reading fantasy books, which is one of my favorite genres, and I do not know how to pronounce any of the words. And so I just make them up. But I don't want to do that with my kids' school books. So having that option is helpful because then you can see, okay, well, a couple of the books are actually available on audio through the library and we're a little bit behind, so why don't we just listen to this book instead of physically reading it? It also gives you the option when you are on the road or doing, car schooling or whatever, you can listen to audiobooks in the car as well, or waiting at appointments, or waiting at sports, or music lessons, whatever it may be. So that is another thing that I like to do in my planning. I actually just did that yesterday. I sat outside and searched all of the books, and well, with Emma's British literature, every single book is available on audio. I don't do any audiobooks for readers for my elementary age kids, but read alouds, I will often choose audiobooks as well, especially if it's like a multicast or a dramatization, like unabridged dramatizations. I absolutely love it. Really immerses your child in the story, so that is a lot of fun. And then once I have everything written down and kind of where I think it ought to be, that's when I start to physically write it in my planner. I mean, you could write it in pencil, but I use a lot of sticky notes at first just to kind of move things around and see, okay, is this realistic? I have 12 books that we have to read this month. No, that's not realistic. So I'm going to move things around a little bit. And that just gives you a little bit more freedom. Doesn't mean that you're not doing the work. It just means that you are changing how it is done. And if you don't know how to schedule a book, what you're going to want to do is look at, the page numbers and look at how many days you want to complete that particular book and everything that you want to do around that book. And then you just, divide the page numbers by the days to get the page count for each day that you're reading a book. You may not want to read a book 5 days a week. You may only do it 3 days a week. And so you have to take that into account. And it does take a little bit of juggling, but putting the time in at the front end to familiarize yourself with the resources, to really understand what the different curriculum that you're using is going to be is very helpful. Once you have everything laid out in a nice way, then you can really start to deep dive on the content of the curriculum and resources that you're using. And so that is things like reading notes and instructor's guides, coming up with questions, going through different resources and seeing, well, what does the workbook want you to focus on? And do you want to focus on those things, or would you rather have your child narrate to you and tell you what they think is important about that particular resource? So that's kind of the next step in my process. I've been doing real-time homeschool planning on this YouTube channel for years. I do not do everything in a weekend. I do not do everything in a week. I start to brainstorm usually in February or March on curriculum and resources that I want to use. And then I start to slowly purchase things and go through things and come up with how I want to structure our year. And then I fill in what we're going to do. And that's how I've been doing it for many, many years. It is what works for me. I know that everybody is different. And then I do weekly planning. And the reason that I do weekly planning is because you just never know what's going to be coming up in the week. There could be a week that's heavy with appointments. And so if you are thinking that you're going to get through so many things, but then you're held back because you're out of the house doing a bunch of other non-schoolish things, you don't want to constantly feel behind. And I realized a long time ago that just taking a little bit of time on Sundays to plan out our week is so much more effective for me to stay on top of things and for my kids to complete what they need to. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it informative and helpful. If you're looking for more help and encouragement around home and homeschool, I would love for you to come check out my membership community. That link is always in the description box. And don't forget to check out the collaboration playlist, which again is also in the description box. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.